What's up guys, Asian here again with another theory crafting video. So yes, you can tell my webcam is back up, which means I am back home in my apartment in Milwaukee. I am back at school, so I do have access once again to my face cam and double monitors, so now all of my videos should be slightly less janky than it used to be before, and streams will be obviously you'll be able to see me again on streams and things like that. So this is just kind of another continuation of the proposed racial changes that were kind of posted last week on, I believe it was Tuesday early morning. So one of the things that we first talked about with the racial changes were how that affected resource pools and things like that. Now we're going to be talking about the other implications of taking away the percentages from racial passives. One of the big things that a lot of people are looking at now is Arcane Infused, how does that affect things? So without a link below, I have a link to Tabitha's website. Tabitha doesn't play anymore from what I know. I could be mistaken about that, but the website is still updated for Murkmire, and it basically goes through all the mathematics behind whether you want to use Infused or Arcane for each DPS spec. Now, I'm just have everything up here, all the formulas up here, and are just to kind of double check the math, but I do know that all this is correct. But one of the things that was Tabitha found out was that magicka Nightblades, you will want to use Arcane instead of Infused. For all the other magic DPS, Infused is going to be stronger, and the rationale behind why Arcane is stronger for magicka Nightblades is because they have that 8% additional passive to their max magicka bonus. While Sorks also have that passive, they also have some additional spell damage modifiers from the Expert Mage passive, so that pushes Infused ahead for magicka sorcerers. So that's why it's only there for magicka Nightblades. Magicka Wardens, while Northern Storm does boost your overall max magicka, the Bear Ultimate does provide more DPS, so a lot of Magicka Wardens won't actually be using Northern Storm at all for the extra magicka boost, so Infused is still stronger for a Magicka Warden there. So the question remained that kind of came up here was, now that we've taken away the racial passive, now that Dunmer no longer have 9% additional max magicka, is Arcane still the best option for magicka Nightblades? So here's how the basic formula works, and this is how Tabitha managed to work everything out here. So Arcane will always give you 870, and this is the same for Robust as well on the stamina DPS side of things. They'll always give you 870 base resources. Now, these resources are added onto your base resources, so they're multiplied out by the 20% from your CP point passive, and that is the 1.2 that we have here. And then what you do is then you sum up all the other sort of additional multipliers that you have. Those are actually tacked on after CP passive, so when we tack on things like Warhorn or racial passives and everything like that, we get 41% additional max magicka. So that's where the 1.41 comes from. Then finally we divide this total number by 10.5, because remember, it's 10.5 max magicka is equal to 1 spell damage, and that gives us a comparable spell damage to compare to an Infused spell damage glyph. And now Infused spell damage will give you an additional 104 spell damage on top of the default spell damage glyph. So we just need to multiply that by our spell damage modifiers. So major sorcery and minor sorcery are 20 and 10%, which combine to make that 30%, which is where that 1.3 comes into play. Now, this top one is where magicka Nightblades currently are right now in Murkmire, and that gives us about 140 additional spell damage. Compare that to the Infused, which gives us 135.2 additional spell damage. Now, if we are not a magicka Nightblade or we're not a magicka Sork, it gives us 132, and Infused obviously is above that, 135.2. Now, this next line is what we're most interested in. So this is actually it should be 3.2. This is basically taking a look at what happens if we actually take away the Dunmer 9% additional max magicka passive. So basically we're going to see whether or not this ends up being higher than that 135.2 or not, and if it is, then Arcane is still going to be best for magicka Nightblades, and if it's not, then Infused is going to be better for magicka Nightblades now. It's 131.24, which is lower than 135.2 for the specifics. Oh, that did not get put where I wanted it to get put. There we go. So for the actual percentage difference here, we're just going to do, we'll round up to the closest decimal point here. that's about a 3% difference or so. So it looks like if these changes go through, regardless of how much max magicka you're going to get, regardless of whatever your max stamina is going to be for each of the different races, it does seem like Infused is going to be the best jewelry option choice here if you don't want to go with Bloodthirsty. So remember that Bloodthirsty is going to be typically going to be stronger if you're, especially if you're in a class that has an execute ability. But it all depends on the duration of the fight and things like that, whether the specific fight calls for a faster execute phase or a faster non-execute phase. So right now, with the current changes that are proposed, it does seem like you're going to be looking at all Infused for jewelry or all Bloodthirsty or some combination thereof. Arcane and Robust have pretty much been completely supplanted by Infused. That being said though, it's only about a 3% difference on magicka and Nightblades. And if we go ahead and take a look at, it should be if we take a look at non-Nightblades and non-Sorks, the difference is obviously going to be a lot bigger because you're still losing out on that additional max magicka modifier. So if we go ahead and do the math here, and we're still going to round to the closest 1 decimal point here, it's about 9.65% difference. So it's going to be noticeable, especially when you consider that you have 3 jewelry pieces. So it's going to be you're going to have 3 added onto this. So if we go ahead and just multiply everything out by 3, so if we just do 3 times minus 3 times divided by 3 times, oh, I am missing a, put that down, I think, no. Yes? No. Well, regardless, you're still getting about a 9. I should have actually figured this out. You're just multiplying everything by 3. It doesn't change anything. But yeah, it will make up. It will be a difference here. Actually, yeah. So it's still going to be about a 9.5% difference, 9.6% difference, I should say. So it's going to be noticeable. Whether or not that results in like any significant DPS gain, that remains to be seen. It probably isn't going to be all that significant in the end. Now, the other thing that people are going to be a little bit concerned about is whether 3 times Infused is still going to be best for magic DPS, or we're going to be swapping back to 7 times Divines. So for this, we're going to turn to our ability metric calculator here. So we're just going to take 2 different scenarios. So the first scenario is going to be with the 4 Divines, 3 Infused, and we're assuming that we are losing our max magicka passive. And then the next condition here is going to be set combo 2. This is going to be all Divines. So we have 7 Divines, no Infused at all. And again, we're assuming that we still have the same max magicka passives. We're taking away the Dunmer, so we're on a Nightblade, so we get the 0.1 from Warhorn, 0.5 from Inner Light, that's 0.15. 0.02 from that gives us 0.17, 0.06 for Undaunted Metal, that gives us 0.23, and then 0.08, which gives us 0.31 here. And we're not assuming that we have any Warhorn uptime right now, so we're just assuming that no Warhorn uptime. We could assume that we have up to 30% Warhorn uptime, 100% Major Force uptime. We can assume 50% Major Force uptime. It all is varying, so this is going to be kind of like the very, very base kind of comparison here, and we can see here that the difference is overall really, really small. We're talking about 0.04% of a 0.04%, so it's less than 0.1% difference in favor of 3 times Infused, 4 times Divines. Now, if we assume that we have, let's say, a 33% Major Force uptime, so we have an additional, our average crit damage is 0.97 instead. So if we go ahead and change that out on these 2, then we get a 1% difference, again in favor of the 3 times Infused, 4 times Divines. Now, how does that compare to what it is currently on live? Well, we just add in the 9% from the Dunmer passive here. Let's change this to none, so we don't get any of the additional magicka or spell damage that might confound our results, even though they shouldn't. Still want to be extra careful though. So currently on live, it'd be about a 0.11% difference. So we're taking a look at basically about a tenfold drop. It's still going to be very small. The difference is still going to be very, very small between 3 infused, 4 divines versus 7 divines. So really, I wouldn't bother transmuting anything at all. Looks like maybe 7 divines is going to be best if you have good Warhorn uptime. If you don't have good Warhorn uptime, the difference is pretty much going to be a wash. I mean, currently it is technically a wash. I mean, if you're thinking about it from a purely optimized standpoint, then yes, you want 3 infused, 4 divines versus 7 divines. But ultimately, again, it's a tenth of a percentage point. It's not really going to make or break your DPS. You're talking, if you're pulling like 50k DPS, you're talking about literally 50 additional DPS from going 3 infused versus 7 divines. So overall, the change in the percentage modifiers to a flat modifier for magicka DPS hasn't really changed anything that much. The only real difference is that Arcane is no longer going to be the best jewelry option for magicka Nightblades. It's going to be infused just like the rest of the classes here. Now, when Necromancer class is released on the PTS, we will try to figure out whether the same thing is happening here. Based on what we have right now and based on kind of the trends that we're seeing, I don't anticipate that Necromancer is going to have anything different compared to the other existing 5 classes, but we could be wrong. We might see some weirdness in their passives that might, you know, change the numbers a little bit here and there. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys found this informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.